then 15 of that outer ring, and then those final 5 bringing all 33 Raptors online. After that, we'll see about a second later, and then it'll lift off, so a couple seconds from first light until motion. As usual, we can hold at T-minus 40 seconds if we have any last-minute issues to clear, anything with the range, anything that triggers on the vehicle. And if we pass T-minus 10 seconds, the deflector fires, and then we scrub, then we're done for the day for at least 24 hours. But weather is fantastic, light breeze, no clouds in the sky, not tracking any hardware constraints to launch today. If we're not able to get off the pad, though, we've got opportunities throughout the week, could be 24 to 48 hours later. But everything looking great. I'm excited to be able to see another one of these get off the pad. Check back in with everybody in just a couple of minutes. Back over to Jesse and Kate.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Now, you could see those 2 towers in the back there in the distance at Starbase. Starbase is really coming along just as rapidly as Starship itself. That second launch tower will be coming online next year, and it will allow us to increase our flight cadence and test even more frequently. And just a few kilometers away from the 2 towers, our cutting-edge 1 million square foot star factory is nearing completion with the goal of producing hundreds of ships a year.
Yeah, that might sound crazy, and that's because it is. If you can imagine a future where we are flying and catching a fleet of boosters, which is the lower portion of the vehicle, that fleet is actually pretty small compared to the potentially hundreds of ships, the uppermost portion of Starship, that will be flying in that future vision.
Yeah, exactly, Kate. Those ships will be staying in space for long-duration missions to go to the moon or Mars, or become tankers for refueling, or any number of other uses. But the boosters will come back and turn around to launch the next ship. So in order to hit that production cadence of hundreds per year, we're rapidly building out Star Factory, which is our Starship production facility in Texas.
And live views, not live views, views of that Star Factory there. Now, this place allows us to move system integration work earlier in the build process, which means more efficiency, higher quality, and ultimately faster production. Starbase is an incredible place to be right now. There really is nowhere else in the world like it. You know, hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Now, what you might be hinting at is the good news is we are hiring. If you love what you're seeing, check out our openings at Starbase. On the engineering side, we're looking for vehicle design engineers across structures, propulsion, and integration.
And if you're a hands-on tech, we're looking for integration technicians and welders that can help us hit our goal of building a Starship every 8 hours. And to do that, we need builders.
Yeah, we're definitely going to need a lot of builders to get that down to just 8 hours.
Right? Now, beyond that, in order to keep Starbase growing, we have all kinds of roles, from baristas to HVAC technicians to EMTs. So chances are, if you're looking, we have a place for you. Visit spacex.com/careers to see all of our openings.
Every role is critical to the future of Starship. With Starbase growing faster than ever, we can't do it without you.
This place is where our future is being built, and that is a future that we are all very excited about. All right, let's dive deeper into the inner workings of Starship and learn more about this flying skyscraper.
Starship features 2 major parts: the ship, which has 6 Raptor engines, and the Super Heavy booster, which has 33 Raptor engines. Now, just like flights 1 through 5, the current iteration of Starship is an experimental vehicle flying for development. And with a few planned upgrades, Starship will have 3 times the thrust of Saturn V at 10,000 metric tons of thrust, plus the added benefit of full reusability. Starship 2 will be capable of carrying more than 100 tons to orbit, and Starship 3 will be able to lift more than 200 tons to orbit. Now, the amount of mass we're able to launch per rocket is crucial to creating a self-sustaining city on Mars.
Exactly. And speaking of launch mass, we should probably acknowledge the elephant, banana, in the room, and our today's secret payload.
Okay, so 2 things here. The first is, remember on Flight 5, we had a giant Mechazilla decal where the banana is today. And there you can see that on your screen. Now, that decal is 3 feet tall, which might be hard to tell looking at it on the ship right there, which is why we have a full-scale reproduction of that decal here with us so that you can see the size compared to humans.
Yeah, it is bigger than you think it is. Like Jesse said, it's 3 feet high, and this is full scale, just like the one that was on Flight 5. Now, it is hard to follow Mechazilla, but I do have one better. Bananas have been used for quick visual comparisons for quite some time, and our teammates thought it was time to bring the venerated yellow fruit to Starship.
Today, we're flying Starship's first ever physical payload, which is, as you might have guessed, is a banana.
That's a live view inside Starship, and if you look closely, you can see our stuffed banana payload, which is doubling as today's zero gravity or zero-G indicator. And while this payload will remain inside the vehicle at all times and will not be deployed today, it did give us a chance to do a test run of payload approval processes with the FAA. And that's something that we're hoping to do next year if we start flying our first Starlink satellites on Starship. Godspeed, banana.
Some additional size for context, you can see on your screen a Starlink Mini next to a banana for scale. And to get an even better sense of how big Starship is, let's take the average size banana next to the average size human, which is about 2 meters high. Towering over our average human is the length of the Millennium Falcon, which comes in at 35 meters. Our Falcon 9 rocket with the payload fairing attached is double the size of the Millennium Falcon at 70 meters, and nearly twice the size of that is the fully integrated Starship at 121 meters tall. The ship is about 50 meters, and the Super Heavy booster alone stands 71 meters tall. And we do have plans to make the ship and booster even taller in the future.
And yeah, it might be hard to imagine that because it's pretty big already. Now, Starship's first stage has a diameter roughly 2.5 times that of Falcon 9, and as you can see on your screen, with 33 much larger Raptor engines. I love this view. This is looking up at the aft end of Starship there at the engine bay. Now, moving up the rocket, the ship features 6 Raptor engines, 3 sea levels and 3 vacuum engines, which are optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. The ship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing on any hard surface, like the surface of the moon, for example. This ship is also outfitted with 4 flaps to help aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude during atmospheric flight and enable a precision landing.
To reach full reusability, the ship must survive re-entry not just once, but multiple times. It took the teams at SpaceX about 3 years to develop the heat shield on Starship, and development for improvements is still ongoing. The ship's heat shield is composed of thousands of hexagonal ceramic tiles designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry, where temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit or over 1,400 degrees Celsius. The tiles are something we iterate on every flight test as we build towards a heat shield requiring no refurbishment between flights to unlock rapid reuse.
And the teams have actually already begun testing the heat shield tiles in environments simulating Mars atmospheric entry conditions, which we'll see more of in just a few minutes. You know, slightly different than coming back to Earth.
Just slightly different. And in between the first and second stages is our hot stage, which we saw in action on flights 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let's recap that last flight to understand what we accomplished and how that's changing for today's flight.
On October 13th, Starship successfully lifted off at 7:25 a.m. Central Time from Starbase, Texas. A gorgeous sunrise ascent that was fairly quickly followed by the hot stage separation maneuver, which we see here, as well as on multiple previous Starship flights. The booster then performed a flip maneuver, boost back burn, and then we jettisoned that hot stage, which you see there. The booster then performed its boost back burn, which brought it back on a trajectory to the launch tower, back to the Gulf Coast. We can see here the booster descending through the Earth's atmosphere. It broke the sound barrier again as it was coming back through. Those Raptor engines relit, and then the moment that made us all lose our minds, the booster came back for a successful first ever catch by the chopstick arms back at the exact same launch tower that it launched from. It was insane. As you can see, we all went bananas. And you did too, probably. Thousands of distinct vehicle and pad criteria had to be met, and thanks to the tireless work of the entire Starship team, we succeeded on that first attempt.
And while that all was happening, ship was continuing to coast towards the Indian Ocean. It executed an excellent coast, made its way down through re-entry, relit its engines, did that flip maneuver, relit its engines for landing burn, and then splashed down into the Indian Ocean. Now, that whole flight test concluded that splashdown 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 40 seconds after launch.
Starship's fifth flight test was one of our most ambitious yet, and as we work to demonstrate techniques fundamental to Starship and Super Heavy's fully and rapidly reusable design.
And I think I speak for all of us when I say that seeing the catch for the first time was an extraordinary moment for the entire SpaceX team. We've seen a lot of wild firsts here, but that was truly an epic moment in time.
Yeah, we're not forgetting that anytime soon. Certainly one in the history books. Now, today's mission profile is very similar to Flight 5, but there are some differences that we've incorporated as we prepare for future reuse. About 20 minutes from now, Super Heavy will ignite its 33 Raptor engines and lift off from Starbase. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the booster will separate from the ship in a hot stage separation, and we've seen that occur on multiple flights, including Flight 2, 3, 4, and 5. About 2 seconds after that burns, we'll jettison that hot stage. The booster will perform its flip and boost back maneuver, and we will once again look to return the booster to the launch site for a catch by the tower's chopstick arms. And once again, we will only attempt that if both the booster and tower are healthy after launch. We were successful last time, but we should emphasize that this process is still very new. And this is still just a test, so success is very far from guaranteed today. It's always a possibility that we'll lose the vehicle. It's a contingency that we always plan for.
Yeah, exactly. Now, while the booster is doing its job, the ship's 6 engines will remain lit for a few minutes before shutting down and then going into the coast phase. The ship will coast for a total of about 40 minutes or so, reaching a peak altitude of approximately 213 kilometers. Now, one additional objective for this flight during coast is an in-space burn using one of ship's Raptor engines. Doing a burn while in space will build confidence that we can do deorbit burns, which is a key capability for upcoming orbital missions. Now, after the coast phase, the ship will attempt a controlled re-entry, and if ship makes it all the way down, we'll once again perform a flip and landing burn before splashing down in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah. Now, there are some notable changes to our entry plans for this flight, and they will intentionally push the ship to, and very likely beyond, its limits. This includes several thermal protection upgrades and operational changes as we prepare for future ship catch and reuse. Today's flight test will also test new secondary thermal protection materials, and entire sections of the heat shield has actually been removed in certain areas. And on top of all of that, we're going to fly the ship at an aggressive angle of attack once it's moving slower than the speed of sound.
Now, this means we'll be flying nose down instead of our usual belly flop orientation during final descent. This will no doubt stress the limits of the flap's ability to maintain control, but it will be a chance to get real flight data on what our limits actually are.
So, to put it as bluntly as possible, do not be surprised if this is not a smooth flight to splashdown today. We are intentionally looking for how far we can push and discover the vehicle's true limits as we plan for future ship return and catch.
And even though ship recovery is not expected today, the telemetry and data we receive all the way to the end is what we're looking for and what will help us get to a rapidly reusable Starship of the future.
Now, just like Flight 5, one of our objectives for Flight 6 is attempting to return the booster to the launch site to be caught by the tower. The booster for this flight has upgrades to add redundancy across its propulsion system, increase the structural, as well as increasing the structural strength in a few spots. We've also implemented a few changes across both ship and tower to try and speed up the post-catch timeline. Returning vehicles to the launch site leverages the same hardware that we use for stacking ahead of flight, making our infrastructure multi-purpose. And in order for us to achieve that rapid reusability that we keep talking about, we need a quick turnaround. And you can't get much faster than returning the launch vehicle right back there to where it needs to launch from again.
Exactly. In this video, you can see our original render of booster catch alongside the actual footage of catch from Flight 5. This video is just mind-blowing to see the predicted versus reality. And just like the last flight for today's booster catch, there are thousands of criteria that need to be met in order to proceed with catch. Automated checks have to indicate we have a healthy booster and a healthy tower, and the flight director must issue a manual command which is informed by manual checks from the flight control team. If this command is not sent prior to the completion of the boost back burn, or if automated health checks show unacceptable conditions with Super Heavy or the tower, the booster will default to a trajectory that takes it to a landing burn and soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
I remember when we first heard the call out that tower was go for catch on Flight 5, and wow, I still get goosebumps when I think about that moment. Now, for today's test, just like Flight 5, we're only going to catch if everything on the booster and the tower checks out after launch. As always, we accept no compromises when it comes to the safety of the public and our team. And so to that end, the area around the pad and the flight path are cleared in advance.
A lot of things have to go right in order to line up the booster catch. So if all criteria is met, we will attempt to catch, but there is a chance that we may not. Either way, we'll be getting tons of in-flight data, which is extremely valuable.
Exactly. That first catch was pretty epic, though. So like you, we'll be keeping our hopes high to see another one this afternoon. Now, Dan, you got to see it in person last time. Are you mentally prepared for a possible round 2?
I mean, probably not. That was pretty hands down the coolest thing I've ever seen. And the fact that we're going to do that every time now breaks my brain a little bit, but it was absolutely incredible. One of the unique aspects with Super Heavy coming back is it does generate a sonic boom. This is something commonly associated with reusable spacecraft. It's coming in faster than the speed of sound and then slowing down. It creates that pressure wave that builds up, and then when it reaches you on the ground, that rapid change in pressure is that quick thunderclap sound that you hear. Now, generally the only effect is that thunderclap sound, but if you're not expecting it, it's definitely going to get your attention, and we were able to hear it last time. The impact of, or how loud it is, changes pretty dramatically. And in this video, you can see as we were descending, and there was kind of that quick triple pop that you heard. Now that was picked up from closer to the pad. Most people at our distance and further away, you're only going to hear 1 or 2 as they're happening kind of so on top of each other that it might just sound like one big bang. But as I said, that's something that's only associated with spacecraft being reused. We hear it with Falcon 9. We heard it during shuttle, and looking forward to hopefully hearing it today. Just a quick status check, though. We're about 85% full on ship, almost 2/3 of the way full on booster, continuing to count down about 13.5 minutes, a little under that, until we lift off today. But still looking good. I'll check back in with you guys in a few minutes. Back over to Jesse and Kate.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think Dan said it really well when it really does hurt the brain to think that this is going to be the norm, that this is just the beginning. Every one of these flights is a step closer to a fully operational Starship that will take us beyond Earth orbit. And with our pace of rapid iteration here, the Moon and Mars are not nearly as far in the future as you may think. In fact, we're planning to send Starships to Mars as soon as 2026.
Which is when the next Mars transfer window opens, which is under 2 years from now. Now, you might be familiar with the Starlink logo, which you see there on your screen. It's an iconic representation of the Mars transfer orbit, also called the home and transfer orbit. This transfer window, or the time between the time when Earth and Mars are closest to each other, opens every 26 months and is only open for about 2 to
tell him. Hey, Mr. President, he wants a picture with you.
This is Matt capital to get it this far. So that's
That's okay, because this is exactly what we are testing for, to physically see if underperformance matches what we expected.
Starship development is also being aided by Starlink's
I'll start out
here's again today. Giving you the command to bring the booster back to the launch site. And we have the tower did just incredibly well on the last one. We used any of our required redundancy for a catch. So we're hoping to see that today. A lot of the team really put armor around the tower, making all those things work.
Further north, right?
As possible. And we're hoping to seeing that happen again.
You okay, Dan?
Of course, sending our first payload to space.
You okay?
Yes, sir.
Not a bad life. This powerful man involved. Got my code. I didn't say it.
It's almost like a Twitter password.
I've had it with him. He hates it.
It's almost like
We go less than 2 minutes. This is exciting.
I haven't. No, we live in Florida, so I know this is spatial. This is the whole thing. Yeah, I think. How far is that to altitude?
It's never a guarantee. We've done this once. We'll see if we do it again. We're not only going to do it. Booster,
Yeah, I'm a pilot, but I'm not a
It's a lot like that.
Not quite the same. Yes. Slightly different.
It's direction.
I know enough. Yeah, no,
just about 35 minutes into today's flight test, continuing to get some live views from Starship itself as it continues to make its way around the globe. We are coming up on what we will hopefully see is our in-space relight demonstration. This will be firing up one of those 3 sea-level Raptors on the very aft end of the ship and essentially reigniting it while we're in that microgravity environment in Earth orbit. We had attempted this once previously on Flight 3, but ended up skipping it when we had some attitude control issues with the ship. And we are on the dark side of the planet right now, so views are going to be a little bit dark, but hopefully we see some engine light come on as we do this relight test. This is a pretty critical capability for doing deorbit burns. This is not a deorbit burn. Want to stress that we're on a trajectory where if we didn't fire off the engine at all, we are definitely coming home. Ooh, seeing some thunderstorms down on the ground. That's pretty cool. But this is not a deorbit burn. If we didn't fire this engine, we're on a intentional suborbital trajectory. So no matter what, we're coming in over the Indian Ocean. Firing off the engine does change your exact splashdown point a little bit, but we've got this keep out zone across the entire Indian Ocean that we made sure was clear ahead of flight, and we continue to monitor during, but we're going to aim for that and hopefully see this relight test coming on in about a minute. It's just going to be one of these engines, and it uses what's called the header tank, so these small spherical tanks in the very top of Starship up in the nose cone. They don't require nearly as much gas to pressurize as your main tank, so they're really useful for any in-orbit maneuvers and then for landing burns. So if we make it to a landing burn today, we'll be using them for that as well. So we should be coming up in just about the next minute. Should be under a minute now away from that expected ship burn. And again, we've relit Raptors pretty frequently. We just did it with the landing burn and that boost back burn on the booster, and we've done it on ship landing burns. We just haven't done it in this microgravity environment where your propellant management and a lot of other things are different as you're not weighed down by the force of Earth's gravity.
And
just heard the call out for startup. There's some light. There's that Raptor relit. And shut down. All right, there you have it. The first time ever lighting a Raptor while in outer space, other than our ascent burn. So really cool to see that relit. That's a pretty critical capability that we're going to need when we're doing orbital missions in the not too distant future. So check another one off. That was a really cool. That was an objective we really wanted to hit on this one, and so good to see ship knock that one out in orbit. But for now, we're going to coast for just a little bit longer, and then it'll be time for ship entry. So we'll get the usual light show as we return from hypersonic velocities. We're just starting to do the entry prep for that, so we're going to get the flaps positioned, and then it's going to start taking the brunt of all of that heat as you're coming in from well in excess of 10,000 miles an hour. That's all going to build up a lot of heat as you're encountering an increasing atmosphere, building up that friction. And we're going to see how the tiles fare. We've also got some pretty cool tile experiments that we'll talk about in a little bit. But coming up real soon, ship re-entry, successful relight, and we'll start this entry part soon.
Starship is at 100 kilometers altitude. Good attitude for atmospheric entry.
Welcome back to Starship's sixth test flight. It has been an exciting day so far. We lifted off from Starbase at 4 p.m. Central Time. The Super Heavy booster and ship had a successful separation as well as a good boost back burn and good separation of the hot stage adapter. We did not attempt a return to the launch site and catch attempt today when strict criteria were not met and the Super Heavy booster executed a planned divert to a landing burn and soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, obviously we were hoping to come back to the tower, but this was a test and we knew that it was a very viable possibility.
Starship is at 85 kilometers. Flaps now have control of the vehicle.
All right, great news there, turning our attention over to the star of the show here, giving us these amazing views once again. We heard the call out there telling us that the Starship vehicle is now 83 kilometers above, coming up around T plus, well, now actually, the ship, as you can see, is beginning to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. As a reminder, one of the main goals of today's flight test is for the ship to make it through the extreme heat of re-entry and to do so in a controlled manner. Now, re-entry is typically a portion of flight where we don't have communication capability with the spacecraft because it's re-entering at or around orbital velocity, which is roughly 8 kilometers per second or about 5 miles per second. Now, at those speeds, yep, pretty fast. The spacecraft is moving through the atmosphere rather quickly, and that results in friction, as we can see that starting to happen on our screen, and this creates a plasma field around the vehicle. That blanket of plasma distorts communication frequencies, so it's not uncommon to experience brief blackouts in communication.
Starship is approaching the peak heating phase of entry.
And we just heard we're getting into the peak heating phase. We're getting these views courtesy of Starlink. We've got 4 different terminals on the ship itself. It's what's really allowed us to get real-time data during what's otherwise been just a a mystery box essentially for spacecraft design, where when you're re-entering through the atmosphere, at least getting anything in real time hasn't ever been possible before. But we're able to not just get these views, but real-time telemetry from the ship as it's coming through. Do really want to stress that we are really pushing the ship today. The heat shield is not in the same configuration as it was last flight, where we had a team of ship techs do just an otherworldly task, replacing the entire heat shield, thousands of tiles, installing a backup ablative, and that pretty much set us up to do a pinpoint landing on Flight 5. We did not do that with this one. We have some backup in those really sensitive areas around the flap, but this is an older generation heat shield. And knowing we weren't going to do that, we even went and removed some extra tiles. There are some missing tiles on the nose cone where we're testing some backups. There are some steel covered tiles in a couple of different spots. And there's also a whole lot more steel of the ship showing. As you guys talked about, we gave it a little bit of a haircut, a couple hundred tiles trimmed off the sides, and that's where we might have catch fittings in the future. But ooh, color's starting to come in. So it looks like things are going to start heating up, Kate and Jesse.
Yeah, fun fact, Dan, we actually removed 2,100 heat shield tiles from Starship in order to basically present that necessary receding line, which you kind of can see there in your view. Think back to previous flights. The heat shield line came up further on the vehicle, and just like Dan said, we want to test the vehicle beyond what we think it is capable of carrying based on our simulations and calculations. So once again, to just be super plain, don't be surprised if we see some wackadoodle stuff happen here. We won't be. There are a number of things that we are testing out intentionally to see what the ship can take.
Yeah, exactly. And knowing what those limits are will really help us design the vehicle of the future. Essentially, removing those tiles helps us remove a lot of weight from the vehicle, a lot of things that might potentially need refurbishment in the future. And the goal is to come up with a heat shield pattern or design that we don't have to refurbish. We can just continue to use it over and over again. And that's why we're changing some of those tiles and moving stuff around, removing a lot of those tiles, as Kate has been mentioning.
Exactly. And, looking forward to the Starship capability of the future, we want to be able to catch Starship like we do with boosters. And so the next flight, we want to better understand where we can install catch hardware, not necessarily to actually do the catch, but to see how that hardware holds up in those spots. And today's flight will help inform, does the stainless steel hold up like we think it may based on experiments that we conducted on Flight 5? Now, continuing to look, amazing views. Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's so much on this flight that we're doing to try and, make all the ships that we're about to start flying even better, just really understand what their capabilities are going to be. We've got kind of the next-gen ship lined up for Flight 7. It's got all of those heat shield upgrades and everything. And one of the things that we're going to be doing that's most interesting, and one of the reasons we wanted daylight, is we're going to be flying pretty aggressively as ship comes in. We're going to be kind of nose